Hi everybody, this is Wendy Lokanc-Diluzio. In this presentation, I'll review what qualitative and quantitative research is. From my experience teaching this course last year at this time, I found that many students had a hard time understanding the difference between what qualitative and quantitative research was, and in fact they often mixed up the two. I hope that this presentation will be helpful as I'll provide some examples of both types of research. Additionally, I'll also discuss mixed methods research. The learning objectives for this presentation are to define qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods research, and to compare the differences between qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. So I want you to imagine that you're a health education specialist. You want to know if short online or short face-to-face training programs are acceptable to service providers working with a high-risk population. Do they like the training program? Do they hate it? Do they learn something when it's online or if it's face-to-face? To answer your questions, you create a training program. You implement the training program in the two different modalities. You then ask participants in each group to complete a satisfaction questionnaire. The survey asks them to rate different parts of the training. A rating of 1 means poor, a rating of 2 means below average, a rating of 3 means average, a rating of 4 means above average, and a rating of 5 means excellent. You then gather the data from the surveys and get a mean score for each part of the training. With this study, you're looking at numbers. Quantitative research looks at data which has numerical values. A quantity is a number, so quantitative research works with numbers. It is often used to look at simple phenomenon like how depressed, anxious, comfortable, confident, or how happy we might feel, and we determine those things by answering questions on a scale. Let's say you change your mind and instead of giving participants questionnaires, you decide to interview them. You then read through the interviews and look for patterns. You notice themes from the online group, such as online learning was convenient. You could fit in the learning anywhere and any time. But some people miss the back and forth contact with other people. Whereas for the face-to-face group, participants like the opportunity to talk to people. They like that the time was carved out of them for their day to attend the program, but they didn't have the time to process the information from the face-to-face training program. This research is qualitative, which involves looking in depth at a few subjects instead of examining large numbers of subjects with less depth. Qualitative research looks at non-numerical data. Qualitative research tries to look at complex, in-depth phenomena, like what thoughts are running through someone's head. Qualitative research is often done on a smaller group of people than quantitative research. This is for practical reasons. It takes a lot more time to interview and analyze people's answers than it does to hand somebody a survey and then get the average from that survey once you plug in all your data into a database. Quantitative research is sometimes followed up with qualitative research or vice versa. If this is the case, then you're conducting a mixed methods study. For example, if you analyze the quantitative findings and found that the satisfaction scores were much lower on the group of online participants, you may want to conduct interviews to get a more complete picture of the findings as to why the satisfaction scores were much lower. There are strengths and limitations for each type of research. Quantitative research can use statistics to extrapolate data and predict how people will behave in the future. Many researchers prefer quantitative methods because they provide objective, hard facts. Variables are easy to identify and results can be generalized to larger populations. However, they can't explain why social phenomena occur. They just are quantified. They don't take into account the emotions, motives, imagination, beliefs of the participant. Qualitative research does do this and often incites empathetic understanding. It can provide a wealth of in-depth information and even explain findings from a quantitative study. However, it's common for qualitative research to include bias. Due to the personal involvement of the researcher, it's practically impossible to stay impartial. So as you can probably gather from what I had just mentioned in the previous slide, qualitative research is an approach for exploring and understanding the meanings individuals or groups ascribe to social or human problem. The process involves emerging questions and procedures. Data is collected in the participant setting. Data analysis inductively builds from particulars to general themes, and the researcher makes interpretation of the meaning of the data. Quantitative research, on the other hand, is an approach for testing objective theories by examining the relationship among the variables. Variables are measured by instruments. Numbered data is analyzed using statistical procedures. Finally, mixed methods research is an approach to inquiry involving collecting and integrating both quantitative and qualitative data. The core assumption of this form of inquiry is that the combination of qualitative and quantitative approaches provide a more complete understanding of a research problem than either approach alone. Here's a comparison of qualitative mixed methods and quantitative research in terms of design types, types of data, methods, data collection, data analysis, and interpretation. So in terms of designs for quantitative research, this will look familiar to you. There's experimental and non-experimental types of designs, RCTs, cohort studies, case control studies, cross-sectional or prevalent studies, and ecological studies. In terms of mixed method research, there's different types of mixed methods designs also. However, this is quite complex, so we're not going to go through this in this particular course. And then there's different designs for qualitative research also. From what I see in the textbook, they seem to clump all the designs as just qualitative, whereas there's different specific types of designs such as narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnographies, case studies, hermeneutics, and critical theory. If you look at the type of data that's collected in the quantitative realm of things, it's going to be quantitative. For mixed methods, it'll be both qualitative and quantitative, and for qualitative research, it's going to be qualitative data, and that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. In terms of the methods, for quantitative research, it's predetermined. You know in advance. You have some type of a questionnaire where it's either implemented where you give it to a person or you interview a person, but regardless, it's a structured type of questionnaire with predetermined questions as well as predetermined options. They're not open-ended options. For mixed methods, you're going to have predetermined and emerging types of methods, whereas for qualitative, it's going to be emerging. So you're going to be asking open-ended questions, and you may actually end up taking your interview with somebody to, into a different direction depending on what your participant says. So that's what emerging means, that things may change over time or it's developing over time. The type of data collection for quantitative research, it's instrument-based questions, whereas for qualitative, it's open-ended questions, whereas for mixed methods, it's both open and ended questions. For For data analysis, for quantitative research, there's statistical analysis. So again, you're looking at numbers. Whereas for qualitative, it's text or a bunch of words are analyzed. And you can also analyze images. And then for mixed methods, it's both statistical and text analysis. And finally, interpretation for quantitative research. It's statistical interpretation. For qualitative, you're looking at themes, patterns, and interpretation by the researcher. And then for mixed methods, it's across databases interpretation. Okay, so let's go back to the example I started with. You're an education specialist and you want to know if online or face-to-face training programs are acceptable to service providers working with a high-risk population. Do they like it? Do they hate it? Do they think they've learned something? To answer your questions, you create the training programs, you implement the training programs, and then you ask participants in each group to complete a satisfaction questionnaire. As you can see on this slide, there's an example of a satisfaction survey that I actually used in my own research. Participants are asked to rate various components of the training program on a scale of 1 to 5. And the ratings can go from anywhere from poor to excellent. And then they're also asked to indicate their level of agreement regarding various statements. And that agreement scale would go from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Here is a table summarizing the results of the survey. So we have our face-to-face group and our online group comparisons. And, as I said, the findings are analyzed quantitatively. You can see that the ratings are converted into means or averages. Standard deviations have also been calculated, as well as if there was statistical significance between the scores of the participants in each group. So even though we're asking for a subjective opinion of the training programs, those data are still quantitative because the analysis involves numbers. So let's say you want to understand the experiences of people attending those training programs. If that's the case, if you're wanting to understand their experiences, you could also conduct qualitative research, which is what I did. But instead of asking structured questions with fixed responses, you would then be asking open-ended questions where any response was possible. So here's a portion of a transcript from an interview. So I start off by thanking the person for participating, and I say, I wonder overall, what did you think of your learning experience with the workshop? So the participant says, overall, great opportunity to review and to update and all of that. The online experience was relatively easy and all of that. I don't know if there's a good time in the schedule. I would have loved to have the luxury of chatting back and forth, but to be honest, I will put it down to really full schedule of stuff. So I feel like I did the study work and I did the tests and all of that, and you made it as easy as you could. And I really value the overall. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, that all nurses should have that. And I know you weren't just aiming for community health nurses, it's for other folks as well, and I think that's a great idea. And then I respond and I say, do you think that you would have enjoyed the experience more if it was a face-to-face, or had it been a blended learning type of experience? And the participant says, probably, and only because it's the type of learner that I am. Okay, so definitely I'm a people person, so that's my comfort zone. But this and sort of using SurveyMonkey type, I'm becoming more comfortable with that. And I can see how it has its place, and some people will just eat that kind of having control over it and being able to do it. So I would personally have enjoyed going to a class. When would have I had the time to do that? I don't know. So anyway, you can see that it's the type of information collected, it's a bunch of words. And then in terms of data analysis, it's not a clean type of analysis like the previous slide was, where, you know, everything has a number, it fits nicely into boxes. When you're analyzing qualitative data, it's about looking at themes and looking at words and seeing if your participants had similar things to say. But it's really up to interpretation. I could analyze a transcript and have one kind of, you know, understanding of the themes, where somebody else could look at it and think the themes are a little bit different. So anyway, I hope that this particular slide is helpful in understanding what you're looking at or what you're going to see if you're conducting a qualitative study and the type of data you get. It's basically just a bunch of words, or, I mean, it could be pictures also. Well, thanks for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.